Hello and welcome back to MTG Burgeoning, your channel for all things magic. In today's video, we are going to update and upgrade our Morophon the Boundless Shapeshifters with Changeling EDH deck, in addition to updating its Changeling pool. Thank you for choosing MTG Burgeoning for your Magic the Gathering content. Give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video and consider becoming a subscriber. Doing so supports the channel and makes you eligible for our various subscriber rewards series. If you would like to support the channel further, then click the link to our Patreon page in the description below. There you can join our ongoing Pack Wars series as a 1-month supporter or ongoing member. Or try joining Pack Wars for free by commenting on every MTG Burgeoning video in a month. We strive to offer creative rewards through our various Patreon tiers. So if Pack Wars isn't for you, then something else will be. Links to our content and various subscriber rewards series can be found in the description below. Send us an email, follow us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram. We are your channel for all things magic. What's up, MTG-BC? That is the MTG Burgeoning community. Welcome back to another edition of the Up and Up series. Today, it's Morophon the Boundless and the Shapeshifters with Changeling deck. To the right, you see our general sitting atop the deck. To the left, you see the Changeling pool. Both the deck and the Changeling pool will receive some changes during this video today. Let's begin with the deck itself. So we are going to include a few cards that are much more on theme to what we're trying to accomplish with our Changeling pool and with the deck itself. So to begin, the first card that's going to come out is going to be Reflections of Lit Jarrah. So here we have a pretty pricey enchantment of 4 and a blue, so we got a mana value of 5 here, and when it ETBs we choose a creature type, and whenever we cast a spell of the chosen type we get to copy that spell. The only problem with this card, other than its slightly inflated mana value, is the fact that in our Changeling deck right now, we have a little less than 20 overall Changeling creatures, and then of course we get to shuffle in 12 creatures from the Changeling pool. That brings our total up to just over 30 creatures, so that's half the deck roughly are going to be creatures. That, at this time, is not going to be enough to keep the Reflections of Lit Jarrah in this deck, particularly with some of the additions that we're going to make. Until the point comes in the future that the Changelings become more numerous and become more populated within the deck itself, then perhaps we could revisit including Reflections of Lit Jarrah one more time. But as it stands at this moment, Reflections of Lit Jarrah is coming out, and in its place is going to be the deck's very first equipment, and boy oh boy do we have a wonderfully flavorful addition here with Multiclass Baldrick. We have an equipment that costs 1 to cast and 2 to equip. An equipped creature has lifelink if we control a cleric, death touch if we control a rogue, haste if we control a warrior, and flying if we control a wizard. And as long as we have each one of those, which gives us a full party, then we prevent all damage that will be dealt to equipped creature. So as long as we have any combination of those 4 on our side of the battlefield, we're going to give some lucky creature a lot of keyword abilities: lifelink, death touch, haste, and flying. The evasion is very, very nice, particularly in a deck that at this time is not one to be considered overpowered by any stretch of the imagination. And also preventing all damage to equipped creature, well, that's just an additional bonus. So with Reflections of Lit Jarrah coming out, Multiclass Baldrick allows one of our creatures to swoop in with some of that evasive damage and tick our opponent's life totals down at a higher rate than just doubling up on some of the, let's just call them, underpowered changelings that we have in the deck. So, Reflections out, Multiclass Baldrick is in. Okay, next change. We're going to swap out one mass removal spell for one that's going to be so much better for us, and one that I can't believe is not more valuable at the filming of this video. We'll get to that in a moment. But first, the removal spell coming out, it's Blasphemous Act, and this one pains me a little bit because everyone knows how wonderful this spell is for 8 in a red, and let's be honest, no one's ever paying 8 in a red. Most likely, this is going to be 1 red mana to deal 13 damage to each creature. A couple of potential drawbacks due to the flavor of this deck. This really truly has nothing to do with changelings, nothing to do with tribe specificity. This is just a flat-out removal spell. And when we first constructed this deck, we were always going to be on the lookout for any types of removal spells that can do what we need them to do, maybe do it better, and then also do so with some semblance of the flavor that is so dripping throughout this deck. We found that in the next card. So Blasphemous Act is coming out, and now we're going to talk about a card that at the filming of this video is less than 25 cents. And it's mind-boggling to me why that is. Replacing Blasphemous Act is Stick Together. Here we have a sorcery speed removal similar to Blasphemous Act. We're going to pay 3 and 2 white, and each player chooses a party from among creatures they control, and then sacrifices the rest. So now let's look at this card a little bit better. This is not dealing damage to any creatures. So protection, indestructible, creatures that might have a toughness greater than 13, that Blasphemous Act could not remove those creatures. The sacrifice effect dances around all of those things in addition to other forms of protection like Hexproof and Shroud. And let's be honest, we are going to come up to very few instances, if any, that another opponent is going to have a full party. And let's face it, with our shapeshifters with Changeling, it's very possible and highly likely that we have at least 4 of them on our side of the battlefield, giving us a full party, keeping all 4 of those creatures on our side of the battlefield, and then clearing out the rest of the battlefield of all creatures from all of our opponents. And with that in mind, even without a full party, for 3 and 2 white mana to have the entire board sacrifice itself full of creatures, that is monumentally powerful. And I still don't get why this card is so undervalued. I don't know if the community hasn't caught up to what it can really do. Maybe they're too overly focused on it having to be a full party. But let's face it, this is much more beneficial to us in this deck than Blasphemous Act. When we throw out a Blasphemous Act, we're pretty much counting on all of our creatures hitting the graveyard. We cast Stick Together, and there's a very high chance that our creatures stay, at least 4 of them, while the rest of the battlefield is rid of all other creatures. Stick Together is one of those cards that, I'm telling you, I see it ticking up in value at some point. I don't know when, because honestly, I can't believe it's as cheap as it is right now. All right, 2 changes left. The next we're going to take out, it's going to be a card that was recently added during an Up and Up series, but let's face it, it's not going to be as powerful as the next card that's going to take its place. The card coming out is Blades of Venus Val. It is a tribal instant for shapeshifters for 1 in a red, and up to 2 target creatures each get +2/+0 and gain all creature types until end of turn. This is only going to target up to 2 of our creatures. That's just not going to be enough when we really want to have the ability to swoop out and have all of our entire board affected, like some of the other Venus Val spells that we included during that same Up and Up video. This was the weakest of the 3, and as soon as another card that was powerful enough, and this next card is powerful enough, it's going to knock it out of its spot, and it does so right out of the ballpark. So Blades of Venus Val is coming out, and taking its place is going to be Black Market Connections. We're going from an instant with a mana value of 2 to an enchantment with a mana value of 3, and this is going to give us so many more options in addition to being on flavor. At the beginning of our pre-combat main phase, we can choose 1 or more of the following modes. We get to create a treasure token, and if we do so, we lose 1 life. We draw a card, we will lose 2 life. We create a 3/2 colorless shapeshifter creature token with Changeling, and we lose 3 life. And we have a lot of ways throughout our Changeling pool to gain life. So Black Market Connections not only is going to help us with some mana acceleration, some temporary mana fixing, it can also put cards into our hand, which has been a focal point of constructing this deck since day one. And let's face it, for 3 life to get a Changeling onto the battlefield in a Changeling deck, this card gives us power, it gives us versatility, it gives us flavor, it does every single thing we want it to do, and it was the easiest choice to swap out to get rid of the blades to make room for Black Market Connections. And that is the Changeling deck change number 3, and this is the 4th and final one coming out. We're going to slightly lessen the number of shapeshifters with Changeling we have in the deck, and we're going to trade in for the ability to kind of ramp up, to be more fast, to be quicker, to gain more tempo in doing so. So coming out is just going to be a simple 1/3 shapeshifter with Changeling with Death Touch. It's the Venomous Changeling. It's 2 and a black. It's 1/3, it has Death Touch, and it's a Changeling. I mean, there's nothing that's really helping out the team. This doesn't provide any abilities to any other creatures. It does nothing but just possibly deter attackers because of its 1/3 Death Touch body. So if the only reason we really have this on our side of the battlefield is to prevent some attacking, then let's not be reactive and let's be proactive. So let's swap out Venomous Changeling and try to gain some tempo and some power by putting Manicrypt in its spot. We all know what Manicrypt does. It might be the 2nd best artifact in the format. 0 to cast, it comes down, turns sideways for 2 generic mana. Turns sideways for 2 colorless mana. And as long as your coin flipping skills are at least adequate at 50%, you can avoid taking 3 damage at the beginning of your upkeep every single time. So those are the changes for the Changeling deck. Next up, we're going to have some changes and some additions to the Changeling pool. First, let's talk about some new changes that are going to happen here in the Changeling pool. We have had 3 incumbents overthrown because a creature has become more powerful that represents that tribe. So let's start right away with our Rogue tribe. The current, only for a few more moments, incumbent and leader of the Rogue tribe is Xerath the Trickster. It's a 4/4 with flash for 3 Endymion colors to cast. We can pay 2 Endymion colors and remove an unblocked attacking creature. Remove an unblocked attacking rogue we control. Let's try this one again. 2 Endymion colors, return an unblocked attacking rogue we control to our hand, and we put Xerath the Trickster from our hand onto the battlefield tapped and attacking. So since the blocking phase has already happened during combat, Xerath is going to swoop in for combat damage, and there's nothing that our opponent can do with it outside of a removal spell. And whenever Xerath deals combat damage to a player, we may put a permanent card from that player's graveyard onto the battlefield under our control. This is a fantastic one-of, but once Xerath is on the battlefield, it is very, very unlikely that any opponents are going to allow this creature to go into combat unblocked. This one-and-done trick is going to cost Xerath its spot in the Changeling pool. And notice its CMC of 3 Endymion colors. Well, it's coming out, and going in its place is Mari, the Killing Quill. Here we have a 3/2 Vampire Assassin for 1 and 2 black mana. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, we exile it with a hit counter on it. Assassins, mercenaries, and rogues we control have Death Touch, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, we may remove a hit counter from a card that player owns in exile. And if we do, we put a card into our hand and we create 2 treasure tokens. An absolutely phenomenal upgrade to the Rogue tribe. Whenever one of our opponent creatures dies, it just gets exiled. It's gone. It's not coming back. Jarrah is not going to do that. This also gives assassins, mercenaries, and rogues we control death touch, so it helps out the squad. And whenever we can slip in for combat damage, guess what? A hit token is coming off of one of those creatures. We're putting a card into our hand, and we're creating 2 treasure tokens. Mari is going to do so much more than the 1 permanent that Jarrah will get us from the graveyard to our side of the battlefield. That is just a very, very easy choice to swap out Xerath for Mari. All right, the next change, it's one that it hurts a little, but it makes a lot of sense when we start talking about it. Coming out is Lyra Dawnbringer. This is the Angel Tribe incumbent. Well, it actually used to be. It will no longer be leading the Angel Tribe in the Changeling pool. 3 and 2 white for a 5/5 first strike flying lifelinker, and it gives other angels we control +1/+1 and lifelink. So the power and toughness boost is there, along with the lifelink enablement when Lyra is on our side of the battlefield. And she's a pretty big body too, with that first strike flying and lifelink. However, taking Lyra's spot is going to be a creature that's going to provide the team so much more, and that is in the form of Jada, Font of Hope. The mana cost is slashed by 60%. We go from 3 and 2 white to 1 and a white. It's a 2/2 body, so it's definitely smaller, but it does have the evasion of flying, and it has vigilance. And each other angel we control enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it for each angel we already control. So with all of our shapeshifters with Changeling acting as angels, getting Jada into play early and surrounding her with more and more shapeshifters with Changeling is just going to make each new one that enters bigger and bigger. And lastly, as an unbelievable bonus in a mono-white creature, we can turn Jada sideways to add a white mana, and we can spend this mana only to cast an angel spell. This is going to help us to ramp out our shapeshifters with Changeling from our hand, and it will help us to ramp out Morophon, because remember, Morophon is also a Changeling, so it's also an angel. Although it seems that on the surface that taking Lyra out for Jada is not the right play to make, from a team building standpoint and from a board development standpoint, Jada is the right call. That's just what we're going to do. I mean, we're reducing the mana cost. We're spreading the love around the entire body of our board. Jada will do more for the deck than Lyra. Lyra is more powerful in a vacuum, but Jada is better for what we're trying to do. All right, and the last Changeling pool swap out, swap in, well, it's the Horror Tribe, and coming out is Thing in the Ice, a 0/4 horror for 1 and a blue mana. It has Defender, and it ETBs with 4 ice counters on it. And whenever we cast an instant or sorcery spell, we remove an ice counter from Thing in the Ice, and if it has no ice counters on it, then we are allowed to transform it into Awoken Horror, a 7/8 Kraken Horror that when it transforms into this, we return all non-horror creatures to their owner's hand. So from the standpoint of having shapeshifters with Changeling, this leaves all of them on our side of the battlefield and puts all non-horrors right back into our opponent's hands. The only problem is this is not a spell-slinging deck. This is not a deck that is inundated with instant and sorcery spells. This is, and has been through gameplay, a very challenging card to transform by getting the ice counters off of them. So Thing in the Ice really is representing the Horror Tribe by being a 0/4 with Defender. And the Horror Tribe deserves so much more than that. And finally, we found not even an adequate replacement, but a replacement that would have blown Thing in the Ice out of the water, and that is Captain Negathrad, a 3/6 horror pirate for 3 in Dimir colors. Horrors we control have menace. Whenever a horror we control deals combat damage to a player, that player mills that many cards. At the beginning of our end step, we choose target artifact or creature card in an opponent's graveyard that was put there from their library this turn, and then we put that card onto the battlefield under our control. Look at all of the things the new horror leader does that Thing in the Ice could never dream about. It helps out the team by giving them menace. It helps out the horrors by having them mill cards from our opponent's libraries, and then it has that recursive effect at the beginning of our end step. We are going to grab the best artifact or creature from one of those opponents and put that right onto the battlefield under our control. I sense if Captain Nagathriad would have entered into the Tournament of Changelings, whichever bracket he would have been in, he would have claimed victory in that bracket. All right, so those are the Changeling pool changes. Now we have some Changeling pool newbies. The first of the 4 new tribes to be represented in the Changeling pool is Darling of the Masses, a 2/4 elf citizen for 2 in Selesnya colors. The Darling here gives other citizens we control +1 and +0. And whenever Darling of the Masses attacks, we create a 1/1 green and white citizen creature token. Welcome to the Changeling pool, the Citizen Tribe, our 84th tribe to be represented in our Changeling pool. The next new tribe, tribe number 85, we have the Phoenix Tribe. Welcome, Cyrix, Carrier of the Flame, a 3/3 Phoenix for 2 in Rakdos colors. It has flying and haste, and at the beginning of each end step, if a creature card left our graveyard this turn, target Phoenix we control deals damage equal to its power to any target. This will be fantastic for some spot removal, and we do have a couple of graveyard shenanigan-producing cards already in our Changeling deck. And in addition, whenever another Phoenix we control dies, we may cast Cyrix, Carrier of the Flame, from our graveyard. So if Cyrix is in our graveyard and one of our Changelings dies, we can cast Cyrix for its 2 in Rakdos colors, have it come into play, and then do some direct damage. Welcome, the Phoenix Tribe. Welcome, Cyrix, to the Changeling pool. And next up, tribe number 86 in the Changeling pool. Welcome, Hamster Tribe. It's Minskin Boo, Timeless Heroes for 2 in Gruel colors. This Planeswalker ETBs with 3 loyalty counters. When Minskin Boo and Timeless Heroes ETBs, and at the beginning of our upkeep, we may create Boo, a legendary 1/1 red hamster creature token with trample and haste. We can +1 these Timeless Heroes to put 3 +1/+1 counters on up to 1 target creature with trample or with haste. Because of that ETB and at the beginning of our upkeep trigger, we will always be able to generate at least a 1/1 hamster creature token with trample and haste. And lastly, we can take off 2 loyalty counters from these Timeless Heroes and sacrifice a creature, and when we do, Minskin Boo, Timeless Hero, deals X damage to any target, so some more direct damage to throw around, where X is that creature's power, and if the sacrificed creature was a hamster, we will draw X cards. Remember, all shapeshifters in this deck outside of Metallic Mimic have Changeling, which means they're hamsters too. So we can sacrifice one of them, we can hit something with direct damage, and then draw that much cards, depending on what that creature's power was. Minskin Boo gives us another tribe, gives us some direct damage, it gives us some board development, and allows us to draw a lot of cards. Welcome to the Changeling pool, Minskin Boo, Timeless Hero. Welcome, the Hamster Tribe. And lastly, tribe number 87 to be represented in the Changeling pool. welcome the Chiefling tribe and its tribal representative, Raphael, Fiendish Savior, a 4/4 Devil Noble with Flying for 3 in Rakdos colors. Other demons, devils, imps, and tieflings we control get +1/+1 and have lifelink. At the beginning of each end step, not just ours, if a creature card was put into our graveyard from anywhere this turn, we will create a 1/1 red devil creature token when this creature dies, it deals 1 damage to any target. Raphael, Fiendish Savior, is going to make sure that those devils are 2/2s because of its +1/+1 ability, but it will still, in the hearts of many, and right now yours truly, will represent the Tiefling tribe. So with the new tribes in, we are hoping to spread around a lot more board control and board development from the confines of our Changeling pool. We now have 87 different tribes represented, and we're getting closer and closer to the century mark. And there you have it, MTG BC. We have just updated and upgraded our Morophon the Boundless Shapeshifter with Changeling deck and its corresponding Changeling pool. Let me know your thoughts about these changes in the comments section below. This is MTG Burgeoning, your channel for all things magic.